History is often written by the victors, but it is edited by the intelligence agencies. We often use the word conspiracy to describe wild, unverified theories. However, some of the most significant turning points of the 20th century were born in smoke-filled rooms, planned in total secrecy by men who never intended for their names to be known. These are not rumors. They are documented, declassified, and devastating realities. From the division of entire continents to the orchestrated collapse of governments, the hidden layer of global diplomacy is far more complex than the textbooks suggest. But what happens when the cables are leaked and the secrets come to light? Today, we uncover the proven international conspiracies that changed everything. In 1916, while the world was distracted by the carnage of the Great War, two men met in a quiet office to carve up the future. Mark Sykes of Britain and François-Georges Picot of France sat before a map of the Middle East and began drawing straight lines. This was the Sykes-Picot Agreement, a secret pact that ignored centuries of ethnic, religious, and tribal boundaries. The conspiracy was simple. While promising independence to Arab leaders, in exchange for their support against the Ottoman Empire, Britain and France were simultaneously planning to keep the spoils for themselves. It was a masterpiece of double dealing. When the Bolsheviks eventually discovered and published the documents in 1917, the Arab world was stunned. The trust was broken, and the damage was permanent. These arbitrary borders created artificial states that have been plagued by instability for over a century. We see the echoes of these secret pens in every modern conflict in the region. But the question remains, how could two men, with so little knowledge of the land, decide the fate of millions? The answer lies in the cold logic of empire, where strategic interests always outweigh the promises made to allies. It was the first major lesson in how secret diplomacy could ignite a century of fire. In 1953, the democratically elected Prime Minister of Iran, Mohammad Mossadegh, committed an unforgivable sin in the eyes of the West. He nationalized the Iranian oil industry. For decades, the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, now known as BP, had controlled the nation's most valuable resource while paying Iran a pittance. The British were furious. They turned to the United States for help, and Operation Ajax was born. This was the CIA's first major foray into regime change. Agents flooded the streets of Tehran with bribe money, hiring protesters to create chaos and paying journalists to smear Mossadegh as a communist. It was a manufactured revolution. The conspiracy successfully toppled the government, replaced Mossadegh with the pro-Western Shah, and restored the flow of oil. For decades, the involvement of the CIA was a whispered rumor, until 2013, when declassified documents finally admitted the truth. The agency had literally written the manual on how to overthrow a government. But what was the cost of this short-term victory? The resentment planted in 1953 eventually bloomed into the 1979 revolution, changing the course of global geopolitics forever. It serves as a chilling reminder that today's quick fix is often tomorrow's catastrophe. On the surface, it seemed impossible. In August 1939, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, two bitter ideological enemies, signed a non-aggression pact. The world was baffled. Why would Hitler and Stalin shake hands? The public treaty was a simple promise not to fight, but it was the secret protocol that held the true venom. Hidden away in the fine print was a plan to divide Eastern Europe into spheres of influence. Poland was to be partitioned down the middle, while the Baltic states were handed to Stalin. This wasn't just a treaty, it was a roadmap for an invasion. For years, the Soviet Union denied that these secret protocols even existed, calling them a fabrication of the West. It wasn't until 1989 that the Kremlin finally admitted the truth. This conspiracy allowed Hitler to launch World War II without fear of a two-front war, at least for a time. It highlights a dark truth about international relations. Alliances are rarely about friendship. They are often just temporary agreements between predators. But then, who pays the price when two giants decide to share a meal? In this case, it was the millions of people living in the lands between them. During the 1970s, a shadow fell across South America. It was called Operation Condor, a secret campaign of political repression and state terror. This wasn't the work of just one dictator. Instead, it was a highly organized conspiracy between the military regimes of Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, Paraguay, Bolivia, and Brazil. They shared intelligence, cross-border kidnapping techniques, and lists of targets. If a dissident fled from Chile to Argentina, the Argentine police would simply pick them up and hand them back to their executioners. It was a transnational network of death. And in the background, the United States provided technical support and military aid, viewing these regimes as essential bulwarks against communism. The full scale of the horror only came to light in 1992, when a lawyer in Paraguay discovered the so-called archives of terror, 5 tons of documents detailing the fate of thousands of victims. These files proved that the conspiracy was real, documented, and meticulously managed. It raises a haunting question. How many other regional networks of repression exist today, hidden behind the veneer of national security? The legacy of Condor remains a deep scar on the continent, a reminder that when governments conspire against their own people, the law becomes nothing more than a ghost. On August 4, 1964, the United States was told it was under attack. Reports flooded in that North Vietnamese torpedo boats had fired upon the USS Maddox in the Gulf of Tonkin. President Lyndon Johnson went on TV. The public was outraged, and Congress quickly passed a resolution giving the president nearly unlimited power to wage war in Southeast Asia. This was the spark that ignited the full-scale Vietnam War. But there was a problem. The second attack never actually happened. For decades, critics claimed the incident was a lie, but they were dismissed as conspiracy theorists. However, in 2005, the National Security Agency declassified its own internal history of the event. The documents revealed that while the first skirmish was real, the second was a series of errors, false radar echoes, and overeager sonar operators. The high-ranking officials in Washington knew within hours that the reports were likely false. Yet, they chose to use the confusion as a pretext for escalation. It was a conspiracy of convenience. They didn't invent the event from scratch, but they distorted the truth to fit a predetermined policy. This deception led to a decade of war and the loss of millions of lives. And so, we must ask, if the reason for a war is built on a shadow, can the war itself ever be justified? When we think of Project MKUltra, we often think of secret labs in the United States. But this conspiracy had a dark international footprint. One of the most horrific chapters took place in Montreal, Canada, at the Allen Memorial Institute. Under the direction of Dr. Donald Ewan Cameron, the CIA funded experiments designed to erase a person's memory and rebuild their personality from scratch. Patients who had checked in for minor depression or anxiety were subjected to massive doses of LSD, months of drug-induced sleep, and high-voltage electroshock therapy. They were human guinea pigs in a secret war for mind control. The Canadian government was aware of the funding, but looked the other way, while the CIA funneled money through front organizations to hide the trail. When the project was eventually exposed in the 1970s, most of the records had been destroyed. But the survivors remained, their lives shattered by a government that treated its citizens as expendable assets. This was a conspiracy that crossed borders and violated every code of medical ethics. It proves that in the pursuit of power, even the most basic human rights are seen as obstacles to be cleared. The stories we have explored today are not just isolated incidents from the past, they are part of a consistent pattern of behavior. Whether it is the drawing of borders in 1916 or the manufactured consent war in 1964, the common thread is secrecy and a profound lack of accountability. These conspiracies were not the work of movie villains, but of bureaucrats and diplomats who believed that the end justified the means. They remind us that the official version of history is often just the most convenient one. As more documents are declassified and more whistleblowers come forward, the hidden layer of our world continues to reveal itself. It shows us that global diplomacy is not always conducted in public forums, but in the shadows where the public cannot see. But then, if these were the secrets of the last century, what are the secrets of our own? The path to the truth is rarely a straight line, but it is the only path worth taking. Understanding the deception, but it is the only path worth taking. Understanding the deceptions of the past is our only defense against the deceptions of the future. Thank you for joining us as we uncovered the hidden hands that have shaped our world. History is rarely as simple as it seems, and the truth is often buried beneath layers of classified files. If you found these revelations as fascinating as we did, please subscribe to The Hidden Layer and hit the notification bell. We will continue to dig deeper into the stories they didn't want you to know. Until next time, keep questioning the narrative. Next time, keep questioning the narrative.